Welcome again to another installment edition of Adirondack Natives Historic Preservation. This is once again is the Earl, and today we want to continue our discussion about Barker's Store and its historical significance in New York State. And our first example is going to be from the Schenectady History Library information. It's schenectadyhistory.org/families, and it's going to be a genealogical record of the Barkers, and you can see the URL right there. I'm not going to read that all to you, but this once again is kind of a synopsis of the Barker family, not only in Edinburgh but in Northville. They first settled in Northville and then moved to Edinburgh. The first name we see on this genealogical example is Jess Barker, which served underneath General Lafayette in the Revolutionary War. He was an orderly sergeant for General Lafayette, and just wanted to point that out. And then if we scroll down here, we can see John Barker, and it tells a brief story about John, and it mentions that he had the store, Barker Store, in Edinburgh, and it even says he was born in Edinburgh, and talks about him and he was a member of the Methodist Episcopal Church, and married Alice, and continue there. And his son William F. Barker, and then it goes down into tells about their genealogy and their sons and grandsons. And this is a copy written by Schenectady Digital History Archives, 2015 copyright. Get that right in there. 2015 Schenectady Digital History Archive, and it's a service of Schenectady County Public Library. Just want to give them proper documentation and props for their addition to not only the Barkers but to this historical significance of the Barker Store, the Barkers family, and obviously connections to the Revolutionary War. Then we want to move on here today to Saratoga County's government site, and that would be SaratogaCountyNY.gov. You can go there, and I'm going to scroll across here. Department, Saratoga County Clerk, the way we were, Town of Edinburgh. You can go there, and it'll show you the supervisor's name, the town clerk, and the town historian's name. And this just gives you a little more detail. There's an old photo of Grace Simpson there. Simpeson is that last name. Some photos, old photos. The Sacandaga River. The Sacandaga River is in close proximity to Edinburgh, probably about 5 minutes away. And there's Albert and Juliet Arthurton, Atherton. Logging was a big industrial factor for Edinburgh and for the Sacandaga River during the 1800s. There's the old dirt road that led right through the main street of Batchers. Can't really pronounce that name. It's Batchellerville, and it's looking south, and it's in the town of Edinburgh. So obviously this was probably like a suburb of Edinburgh. The old store, and if we look down here once again, we'll see some old farmers there and logging. And then we have the historic Edinburgh Barker Store that we've been talking about, and we have photos of, and documentation of, not only on the YouTube channel, but on the my Google Plus page. And this is an old photo of that same store, and we can scroll right down there and see the Town of Edinburgh Barker store. Let me get into this. Served people of Edinburgh for over 100 years, and it closed in 1945, and we already discussed that. And but I'd like to find out who that gentleman is in the picture. Maybe that was John Barker. That would be interesting to find. And that copyright for that website, for that URL, is copyright 2017, Saratoga County. And we want to move on. And this next example is Thomas Registers of American Manufacturers, Volume 15. It's published by Thomas Publishing Company in 2002. And it just gives a brief synopsis of manufacturing, not only stores in the Saratoga County, but in through Edinburgh and that surrounding area. And then I want to get out of there. And this example here is the early settlers of New York State, their ancestors and descendants, Volume 2, written by Janet Worthy Foley, and that's spelled. Her name is spelled Janetwethy, last name Foley, and published by Genealogical Publications Company, 1934. And that just gives a further reference for the Edinburgh and the Barkers, John Barker, for 1849 John Barker, and that mentions Mrs. Emma from Barker, and I'm not sure what else it says there, but you can see that reference. I obtained this reference from a Google search and a Google Books search as well too, and felt that was significant, and wanted to add that. And then I want to move on to my next example here, and this one is basically a periodical that was published during the late 1800s, dated 1895. It's titled Hardware, devoted to the American hardware trade, Volume 11. And just want to, and this is the same publication, American Hardware, devoted to the American hardware trade, Volume 11. I just want to scroll over here to show you that this is the Library of Minnesota. It's in the Library of Minnesota there. Make sure we give them proper props and documentation. And just scroll down here to show you what that publication looks like. Let me get out of there so you can get a better look at what that looks like. And you can go to Google Books and just type in that information, and it's Hardware, devoted to the American hardware trade, Volume 11. And this is the same document, the same periodical, and it shows that on two different pages, on page 40 and 42, it mentions Barkers, and we're going to go over to page 42, and we're going to scroll down here, and we're going to actually, let me get back there. Let me go back to the beginning here. Actually, page 40, and scroll down here, and we can see that Barker's Fires and Hardware store, underneath that entitle there, it says Barker's New York, and then it has Jesson's Brothers Hardware report burnout, fully insured. I'm not sure who Jesson Brothers and how Jesson Brothers are connected to the Barkers or the Barker store, but this also came up in a Google search or Google Books search, so I felt that was important. But upon further review and research, I found that the Jesson, Jesson brothers have significant historical connections to not only the hardware industry throughout New York State, but have significant connections to that industry as a whole, dating back to the early 1900s. And if we can remember the history about the Barkers, that they settled there in Edinburgh sometime in the early 1800s, right around 1830 or 35, 40, and then they stayed and operated that store until 1847. So that's just further information that could be established to further research the Barkers, their connections to not only the people surrounding them, but the connections to their outside sources as far as their manufacturing and hardware stores. So obviously there was some manufacturing and hardware that were going in and out of that store. I don't want to move on to my next example. I want to make a connection here in a few minutes about that Jesson's family there. And this is another example I want to use today about Barker store in Northville, Fulton County, New York. It mentions William F. Barker, and it talks about he was a postmaster. And if we look at the Barker's family lineage from Colin L. Miller, which we established last week in our last session, copyright 2009 Colin L. Miller. Once again, copyright 2009 Colin L. Miller. This was from that site that I shared the last time we were in. We see that the first name on that list, if we go back to that site, Colin L. Miller, family Barker, John Barker, B. 1800, birth date 1800. We see that the first name on that list is William Fayette Barker, and that would have been our person of interest here in this report of the United States Congressional Series set in volume 1528. And we see you can Google that as well on Google Books. And let's get over to the I apologize for the delay here. Let's get over to the United States Congressional Series set volume 1528, U.S. Government Printing Office, 1872. And I want to find out if there's any more copyrights there to make sure we give them the appropriate documentation. So the documentation there is the reports of the committees of the House of Representatives, and it's the second session of the 4th Congress, as we see there, 1871 through 1872. And scroll down there, get our copyright, Washington Government Printing Office, 1872. I'm just going to scroll down there. And that's all of our copyright information, and just wanted to show you that. And once again, you can go to Google Books and just type in U.S. Congressional Series Set Volume 1528, and that should come right up for you. And it shows William Barker. So we have that example. And I wanted to get out of there. That's the William Barker example that I wanted to show you. You can research that at your leisure. Talks about him in the post office. Talks about him depositing a sum of $200, and it just goes on to document some of his not only financial transactions there at Barker's store, but also some other important historical information there on that page. and you can, at your leisure, research that. Great significance, I would add. And then if we go over to myheritage.com, it's actually a last name. I gotta get that last name, myheritage.com, and you just type in the family name, Jessen family, and this is that information that I was talking about, that I wanted to show you, the link of the importance of this family, Jesson, and this is it's a pretty long URL. I'm not gonna read it off, but it's a extremely long URL actually. But if you go there to the base of that site and just type in that family name, Jessen family name, Jesson, you're gonna see what I'm gonna show you here momentarily. Yep, this is the Earl once again today. I know I said the last installment was probably the last, but I realized that there was additional information that I wanted to provide for you today. And I had mentioned in my last episode Jess Barker. He was a Revolutionary War officer, an orderly sergeant, sergeant under General Lafayette. He was born April 21st, 1761, and died March 19th, 1864, during the Civil War. One of the first families in Saratoga County. Let me scroll in there. As you can see, Jess Barker there. And I just wanted to show you that because that is unique, because Mr. Barker is not only connected to General Lafayette, but if we go to we go back to our Schenectady Digital History Archive, which is copyright 2015, Schenectady Digital History Archive, a service of Schenectady County Public Library, and we go to the chapter of the history of the Mohawk Valley, Gateway to the West, 1614 through 1925, chapter 68. There's chapter 68. It's concerning the raids of Cherry Valley, Johnstown, Fort Plain, and Mormon's Land, VROOMAN, apostrophe S, land. Some unique information about Lafayette, and I think I might have lost it. Oh no, it's right there, highlighted. And maybe I can scroll in. Slowly, I won't have to read it that way. And it just gives some documentation about Lafayette and General Schuyler, and Lafayette's relationship to General Schuyler, and some interaction on June 18th, 1780. And regarding the Native Indians at Fort Stanwick, Schuyler also called, which talks about the Mohawk Indian. We want to bring them up because they're important to not only the Mohawk Valley, but also all of New York State, from the Seneca to the Mohawk. The Iroquois nation had ruled and controlled this land from as far back as we can account almost to historical records say that the Iroquois settled here sometime in 900 A.D., which would be the 9th century, and you can find that record in the Albany Museum. Account for that, concurring account for that, and so the Mohawk had been here for several hundred years, and most likely be here before Columbus, and should have been the founders of not only the Americas, along with some of their other original tribes like the Cherokee and some of the other ones as well too, but the Iroquois, especially since we're talking about New York, are indigenous to this area. This one is also Schenectady history. Let's scroll down there so you can see the copyright once again. 2015 copyright, Schenectady Digital History Archive, a service of Schenectady County Public Library. Excuse me. Scrolling back up to our section, it's under Major Thomas Melville, and it's his family records, and it's Melville family records, and he was synonymous with Lafayette and Schuyler, and this part shows that Lafayette himself was a visitor of the Major Melville, and also Lafayette, if you can read that closely there, Lafayette, it says that Lafayette was a precious surveyor of that memorable party, and it talks about the party of Tea Party, and which is linked to the Sons of Liberty, if you know anything about the Tea Party in Boston Harbor. It's linked to the Sons of Liberty, dressing up as the Mohawk Indians, and obvious it says here this account says General Lafayette was a Souvenir. We're going to go over here and look up what that means, that word. A definition of that word, Souvenir, a thing that is kept as a reminder of a person, place, or event. So that shows that. And we want to get rid of that. So Lafayette was there. And then it tells of Melville's death at the Battle of Bunker Hill. So we want to move over to our next reference, which is once again, and this is Melville family history is out of chapter, let me get over there, excuse me, well, it doesn't have a chapter, but it's Hudson Mohawk Genealogical and Family Memoirs, and you can go to Schenectady Digital History Archive, and I'll scroll in so you can see the URL there. It's there, and it's SchenectadyHistory.org, and just type in Hudson Mohawk Genealogical and Family Memoirs, Melville, Melville. So that's important to know. And our next reference is also from the Schenectady, the same reference as I've been using here in the last few minutes. Schenectady Digital History Archive. This one is chapter 65, and this one is copywritten, the same copywritten as the other ones. Scroll down there. Copyright 2015 Schenectady Digital History Archive, a service of the Schenectady County Public Library. So we want to go up to our writing, our insert for this specific part, and this talks about the Oneida and Tuscarora Iroquois Indians, and how General Lafayette had command of the Northern Department, and was at Johnstown Council, and had ordered the building of forts at Cherry Valley, Oneida County, and Shakari Fort garrison, armed and fortified, strengthened. Colonel Guy Carleton, nephew of the Governor of Canada, he was spying, and Lafayette himself offered a award of 50 GUINEAS for his arrest. So Lafayette had a significant historical contribution there. So the Native Indians were part of that. The Mohawk and the Oneidas specifically, and Tuscaroras. It documents that right there. I'll scroll in so you can see that. I want to include this because I want to include the Native Indian as much as possible, so you can see that history does not operate in a vacuum, and that there's many contributions from many different people, from many different walks of life, that led up to these events, including the Native Indian. Go on to our next example. From this is the Barker line, and this goes back to the Mohawk. This is actually the Hudson Mohawk Genealogical and Family Memoirs of the DeLong family. And if you know anything about the DeLongs, they go all the way back to 1600s, early 1700s. And let's scroll down to what I'm going to add for today. This talks about the Barker line in this. Jess Barker, soldier of Revolutionary War. We already talked about him. Tells when he was born. It tells when he died. His wife's family was some of the ancestors from the Mayflower. Whoa, I missed that there. I want you to see that. So, for Jess Barker, which is our same Barker that we were dealing with originally. Oh, excuse me, I lost my page here. As far as the Revolutionary War and his affiliation with Lafayette, his wife was a descendant of some of the original people from the Mayflower. He was linked to Captain Edwards C. Graves Company and Colonel Joseph Reed's regiment during August 1st, 1775. He also had a time in a Continental Armory 6th Company, Colonel Bradley's regiment. His service was from April 3rd, 1777 to October 8th, 1778. He also appears in Captain Isaac Warren's company, Colonel John Bailey's regiment, dated from Camp Valley Forge, January 24th, 1778. So that is a definite I didn't read all of it, but it's there, and I'm just gonna, you can see that. So you can go to Schenectady history.org, and you can type in the DeLong family, or just type in Hudson Mohawk Genealogical Memoirs DeLong, and scroll down to the bottom of the page, and you'll see the Barker reference that I was referring to. And then this last one we want to look at. This is Francis Barker. This is a continuation of the Barker family tree. Francis Barker, Thomas Barker, William Barker, William Barker. You know, he had a William Barker company. That is significant. But this is Hudson Mohawk Genealogical and Family Memoirs. Just type in Barker. Schenectady Digital History Archive. SchenectadyHistory.org is a URL, and you would search under Hudson Mohawk Genealogical Family Memoirs Barker, as you see there. And just scroll down and look at this at your leisure. There's a lot of information here. Mayflower, Mary E. Dayton, the wife of William Barker. Now that proves what we were looking at there a few minutes ago, as far as her genealogy goes into the Carey line, the Searles line. So that's very historic information regarding that is concerned. And continuing Lafayette, you can find General Lafayette's memoirs, papers. You can find several copies of them. You can find copies of at the Library of Congress, archives at UM. Let's scroll. Let's find out what that is. That's University Library. This is a second of Maryland. Some work is required to go through here. And on the left-hand side, you can see general correspondence. I'm sure if you click on some of these, you can see his correspondence there. That reference, once again, is from, I put in a Google search for General Lafayette, and General Lafayette, let's go back here on my original search. Sorry. I put in General Lafayette papers. I put in General Lafayette. Worked the same. So we have that. We have George Washington from Lafayette. We have the War Department's documentation for General Lafayette. Lafayette to George Washington, April of 1780. Rare manuscripts collection, Library of Cornell, EDU, several different places where you can find Lafayette's. And if you go to that page in Google, there's 10 plus pages that you can find and research Lafayette, the Lafayette papers and work that I'm certain several editors have edited throughout the years from the time of the Revolutionary War. So that covers Lafayette. At your leisure, you can research him. I've researched him through many different sources, and he's everything a historian would want him to be. He was not only a great tactician and a general, but he was also a gentleman, and had some unfortunate events happen in his time period. This one is also regarding Lafayette. I'm going to scroll up here. I apologize for taking so long with this specific one. This is Project GUTEN Edinburgh ebook, Memoirs of General Lafayette, titled Memoirs of Lafayette. Editor. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name. The editor's there. Release date's February 2005. Ebook was posted on this site May 2nd, 2003. It says it was produced by Stan Goodman, Marvin A. Hodges, Hodges, Charles Franks, and the online distributed Proofreading team. HTML by David Wigger, Widgr. Memorials. Sorry about that. Memoirs of General Lafayette, and this goes through and talks about his interactions and his historical contribution to the Revolutionary War, and to what we have been talking about as far as the military road, and the Sacandaga area, Saratoga area, and the surrounding northeast. Connections to Silas Deane, Dr. Franklin, Benjamin Franklin. There's different references there. You can find that at the website is, and I'll spell it for you, gutenberg.org, files, and then you can look it up from there. If you just type in, if you go back to the original and just type in General Lafayette's papers, this will come up. It's on that first page. So there's that. Get rid of that. We'll get rid of this. Our next one is copywritten 2017, Saratoga County. It's from the Saratoga County, New York.gov, and just depicts Edinburgh, Sacandaga Lake and Reservoir. Depicts Mr. and Mrs. Excuse me, Atherton, Atherton, town of Edinburgh, Main Street there. Depicts that if we go up, it depicts that not only farming but logging was a great important logging. That they headed a logging camp, the Athertons. Logging was a major industry in the 1900s and 1800s. We know that. And there is the famous Barker store. And this is another picture of the Barker store. We'd like to find out who the gentleman is in the picture. It would be interesting to find out that was John Barker. We're going to get out of that. This is one of the oldest pictures I found of Barker's store, and town of Edinburgh, Barker's store served people in Edinburgh for over 100 years. It closed in 1945. I wanted to include that. Our next reference is from Janet Weatherly Foley, or Foley. Janet, Janet, middle name Weatherly, or Wheatley, Wethy, last name Foley or Foley, Foley. Early settlers in New York, their ancestors and descendants, Volume 2, Genealogical Publication Company, Looks like 1934 is the publication date for that. And if you scroll down, you'll see that on page 54, it mentions Barker, Mrs. Emma from Barker. I did a Google search, and that's how I found this specific reference.
Go ahead, try it again.
You just do a Google search. The next one is Thomas Registers of American Manufacturers, Thomas Publishing Company, 2002. That also mentions Barker Store in Edinburgh, New York, which is a match. I didn't see the name Barker Store in this reference, but when I did the Google search, it mentions that this book mentions Barker Store in Edinburgh, New York. So that's why I included that. And then our last one is Hardware is Devoted to the American Hardware Trade, Volume 11. And Barker Store is included on that. Talks about the Barker Store. Let's see if I can find it. And that last one that I was just mentioning from, it's a periodical called Hardware Devoted to the American Hardware Trade, Volume 11. We see on pages 40 and 42 a mention of Barker's New York, Jensen Brothers, and that will lead us to what should have been my second segment, but ended up being my first. I apologize for that. But you can see that over there to the right, on the right-hand side of the paper, right over there, Barker's New York, and then it says Jensen Brothers Hardware reports burnout. Jensen's will be continued in the next part of this segment. This once again is Adirondack Natives Historic Preservation. This is the Earl. I thank you for your time, your patience, and please like us and subscribe to our YouTube channel, which will be posted momentarily. Thank you and have a great day. Goodbye.